So, the book I just finished yesterday was a struggle. I honestly kind of had to force myself to finish it. Not because it was a bad book, but just because, I don't know. I guess I was in the dreaded slump, as they call it. And that got me thinking about what I personally do for slump breakers, reading slump breakers. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I have five things I like to do. In all honesty, I almost never get in a slump. I'm not a mood reader. I'm not one of those people that have to be in a certain frame of mind to read a certain kind of book. I usually just stack them up in a pile and I read down the pile. I'm not picky, I guess. I read what's in front of me. But I've been reading a lot of fantasy lately, and my last book was fantasy. And I think that was part of the reason it was so hard, but that's not the point. We're here to talk about slump breakers. What I do to break a slump. Now, a lot of this is probably going to be incredibly obvious if you have ever spent any amount of time reading and in a slump, but who knows? It's just something to talk about, something to give my thoughts on. Like I said, I got five things because the internet loves a good list of five. And we'll start with what's probably the most basic one and perhaps the most, I wouldn't say controversial one, but I can see why some people would think it's cheating, and that's read a kid's book. Read a book from your childhood. I got a couple of Animorphs here. I wish I had more. Animorphs is actually sick if you've never read Animorphs. Animorphs slaps. Don't let the dumbass covers fool you. Animorph slaps, but we're not here to talk about how much Animorph slaps, because Animorphs does slap. But a nice, low stakes, low thinking, like barely even, 100, this one's 154 pages, and this one's probably about the same. I don't know why I'm looking. Yeah, 157, 58. Oh, this has got some kid's name in the back. Funny. But yeah, you can read this in probably one sitting. You really don't have to put a lot of brain power into it. And it's just kind of that, I guess you'd call it the spark. The thing to get you back in, to make you think, oh yeah, this is why I like reading. Because reading is cool. So read something from your childhood. It might help you. Animorphs. I don't know what else people read when they were kids. Boxcar Children. That might be a bit too young. But, yeah, Lemony Snicket, Animorphs, Vampire's Assistant. God, I loved Vampire Assistant. But just something, that reminds you of when you were happy and carefree and you didn't have a 9 to 5 and every day was a struggle and waking up felt like a curse instead of a blessing. None of that when you were a kid. You were happy. You were reading Animorphs in the school library next to your buddy David while he did a funny impression that was probably racist, because if you're my age, we didn't think about that stuff when we were kids. But that's beside the point. Something from your childhood. Easy. I can see why a lot of people wouldn't really like that, because I don't know. Some people are really hoity-toity about books. I'm not afraid to admit it. The next thing I will say that you should attempt to do is read an incredibly short book. Here we have The Strange Library by Haruki Murakami. This isn't even 100 pages long. It opens in a very cool way. Check that out. You ever seen a book open like that? Cool. This book's very good, very surreal, if you want to read a weird book. But that's beside the point. We're not here to talk about this. We're here to talk about the fact that a nice, short, barely 100-page book is, it's a little palate cleanser. It's an appetizer. It's the mint on your pillow at the hotel. It's just something to kind of give you a break, freshen your breath, freshen your mind. Okay, next. This one, I feel like a lot of people are also not going to like this one just because, again, people are weird about books, and you're probably going to think you're talking down to yourself if you are like me and almost 30-something, but read a book that's either like a spin-off of something you really like or is the original version of something you really like. Like we've got one of the 3 Ruby novels here. I am ashamed to admit I love Ruby, or loved Ruby, before Rooster Teeth was assassinated in cold blood. But yeah, these books are not good at all, but I like Ruby, so I liked them. And it didn't really feel like a chore because like I already knew all these characters. I knew everything that was happening. I knew all the funny, stupid fantasy words, like stuff like that. I think also light novels are really good in that sense. I didn't put one within arm's reach because I am small brain, but like if you want to read a good light novel of an anime you really like Spice and Wolf or the Slayers light novel, or just any light novel that's not isekai trash. Although there is some good isekai, but that's beside the point. Uh, if it's a show you like and you've consumed it, maybe to get you back on the reading horse, read some supplementary material from that. Comfort food. I feel like that's what this always boils down to when you talk about a slump break, is because you just read a book that was hard, or it was like Lolita and it messed with your brain and gave you emotions you didn't like. So you have to read something cozy or simple or short. But speaking of cozy, read your favorite book or like a book you really remember liking, which again, this kind of loops back around to the childhood book thing, but like I loved and still love, even though I haven't read these in forever, I loved the Dark Tower books. I pretty much spent my whole junior year of high school reading every single Dark Tower book. So I have fond memories of Dark Tower. I like Dark Tower. And the first book is fairly short. So you can, pick up whatever your Dark Tower is. Maybe it's the first Lord of the Rings. Maybe it's the first Wheel of Time. I really hope it's not the first Wheel of Time because that's like a 700-800 page book. But you know what I mean. Something that you remember reading really well and stuck with you. Like if I didn't pick The Gunslinger by Stephen King, I'd probably pick The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle, or even Name of the Wind by Rothfuss. Just something that you remember reading and thinking, damn, that was good. And then probably my weirdest take for a slump breaker is read a nonfiction book about a subject you are interested in. So here we have Manga in Theory and Practice by Hirohiko Araki, everyone's favorite gay man. This book is very interesting. I haven't read this in a long time. I bought it like the second it came out, and I poured over it like a madman. But this is, it's reading to teach yourself, which I'm usually not a big proponent of nonfiction, as you can probably tell by the fact that I've read like 25 plus books this year already, and not a single one of them is nonfiction. But nonfiction, in my opinion, is very good as a slump breaker because it inherently is different than normal fiction. Because nonfiction is usually written in a different way. There's a lot less, obviously there's a lot less fantasy gobbledygook or sci-fi stupid rules you have to learn. It's the real world, and you're either teaching yourself a cool skill, or you're learning about a funny serial killer, or it's an autobiography of a chef, So that's it. That's the 5. It's pretty simple. Like, I think if you took a second to think, you'd probably come up with all these ideas on your own. But I've been sitting here and dwelling and thinking about this for the past 24 hours or so. So I figured I'd spew it all out, because that's what I do. I just spew shit out to you people, and none of you watch it. But I watch it in my heart. But I do have an honorable mention. This is also kind of a controversial take in a way. Just read a comic book. Like, just read a comic book. This is just a book with less words and more pictures. Like, if you want to read a book, just read a comic book. That'll get you back into books. And comic books are also good anyway. Big proponent of comic books. But that's not for now, and maybe it's for never. But keep reading. I know we're like almost halfway through March, which is insanity. So hopefully you've been reading well. I have not. I have not been reading well. But I've also been reading chonkers this month so far. I think I've only read one book that had less than 500 pages, which is rare for me. I'm usually like a 200, 300 guy, but I'm rambling even more than the point of the rambling. But keep reading, avoid the slumps, and I don't know. You're not still here.